All right. Well, friends, welcome to episode probably 10 or 11 or 12-ish of Tall in the Saddle podcast. We quit counting a while back, but we're glad you're with us today. We have another special guest with us. It's been a while since we've done one of these. We've been super busy and lots going on. We'll try to fill you in today or maybe on a later episode with just Jake and I have some events coming up and things happening. But just to remind you, we are in the Spirit of Virginia arena at the National Center for Healthy Veterans and Valor Farm. We are still raising funds and fundraising for our barn campaign and some other projects around the farm. So if you would like to be a part of that, please check out our website and our social media and see how you can leave a lasting impression here on the farm with your namesake on it. We had Marco on last. If you haven't seen that podcast, please go on and check that out. And on YouTube, and we were discussing this morning how to get this deal on Spotify. So stay tuned for that.
Gonna try to be big boys.
Try to make this thing official. So without further ado, I'm going to let Jake introduce our guest today.
Yeah. So Miss Carol Young is a lifelong horsewoman, a entrepreneur, an industry leader in the field of equine-assisted mental health services, among other things. And more importantly...
It's the among other things we worry about.
More importantly, Carol is a friend and a mentor and a mother and a grandmother.
Those are the other things that are more
There we go. And a follower of Christ. And it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good. So we were just talking a little bit about, our goal here on this podcast is to tell stories of people who are pursuing excellence in their lives, who are pursuing just being the best at whatever it is that they're doing. Yeah. And I think as long as I've known you, that has been a hallmark of your story. Your life goals are to be the best at what you're doing, and you have pushed me and stretched me in that area, and I appreciate that. It's working with you is always a situation of high support. I've never been in a situation with you where I haven't felt very loved, very supported, and also highly challenged, so which is a good thing. That means you are a perfect mentor. But I think if you're willing, one thing we'd like to do is just to get a little background on you. Yeah. Like, obviously you run Healing Strides of Virginia in, is it Boone's Mill, technically, Virginia?
Technically, yes.
Okay. Just south of Roanoke, just north of Rocky Mount, Franklin County, for those of you that know. It's where I grew up.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, if you know, you know. But if you'll give us just a little bit of the history of Carol up to Healing Strides and how that came about, I would love to hear a little bit more about that. And then I know there's some really cool stories involved in the evolution of Healing Strides that I'd love to share if you're up for it.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where it goes from there.
Oh, so who is Carol? That's a really great question. I don't really think back all the time on. Brought up in a Christian family, brought up with siblings that, my children now ask me, how are you still friends and so close with all of your siblings, and how does that work? Because, y'all go on vacation together, and why do you do that? But I think probably I learned very early on to be intentional. And relationships are intentional, right? And God says that we're to do truth and love. And so I'm glad that you feel loved when I'm saying, hey, Jake, look at this.
Do better.
Do better. But that's what, I'm a big believer in when you know better, you do better. Yeah. Right? And we don't always know. And Scripture's pretty clear that if you don't know it's a sin, you're not really held accountable to that. But then once you know it's a sin, right, now you're held accountable to that. And so I think if we live our life based on that, and as I go back, I can remember some of my fondest memories was my parents parents, well, my dad's parents, actually, my paternal grandparents, ran a Methodist church camp in Louisiana. Out at Caney Lake, and going out there to that church camp and just being surrounded by people that loved you and supported you, but always corrected you. and I think, finding those parts of your life where you can go, that's what I can hang on to. That's what I know to be true. And then also having grace to be able to go, it's back here and it's okay. Because I think we're haunted a lot by mistakes that we've made in our life. And I think that Satan is really good at pounding on those things to make us, what's the term, imposter syndrome that people use today?
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that. You remember this? You
question your identity.
Yes. Or even that you're qualified.
Right.
The fact that you said I'm a lifelong horse person, I went, I guess I really am. I got my first horse when I was 4. I guess I have had horses forever.
It's about as close as it gets.
But I started where a lot of people start, just having a horse in the backyard.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a beautiful part of who I am. I learned some really valuable lessons having a horse in the backyard. I thought it was fun to chase him with a squirt gun. He did not think that was so much fun. And he kicked me, rightfully so. I don't think my children even know this story, actually. But he kicked, I don't know that my parents even know this story. And I didn't want to tell on him.
Right.
Because it was not his fault. It was my fault.
And you knew that even at 4?
And well, at that point, I was probably 7. I should have known better, but it was hot, and it's like I was squirting myself because I was hot. We're in Georgia at this point in our lives in the Georgia heat, and that good red clay of Georgia.
What part of Georgia?
Lawrenceville.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was born. And anyway, I got kicked, and I had to go in because it hurt. He kicked me in my arm, and I had to go tell my mother that I'd gotten kicked. And I felt terrible because I didn't, and I kept saying it's my fault. I didn't tell her about the squirt gun, but I kept saying it's my fault. And so, learning that, number one, take responsibility. You don't need to blame somebody else. Yeah. I was being stupid as a kid. I thought it was fun.
I had a conversation with my 9-year-old about that this morning.
But that's important, right? Those conversations are important. And, I remember it being, we're getting ready to have this great ice storm this weekend, and we don't know what's really going to happen. Well, it doesn't ice and snow in Georgia, except occasionally. So my dad's out of town traveling for business, and he had promised to get the barn built, and he didn't get the barn built, and he went out of town again. Well, we got an ice storm, and I brought the horse in the house. And my dad came home. Now, it was in the house, but it was actually a closed-in porch. It wasn't like I did ride him into the living room one time, but I did have a really good childhood. But, Dad comes home, and his, the horse has icicles. His eyes are frozen shut because his eyelashes are frozen. Right, it was bad in Georgia, and he didn't have a barn. So Mom and I brought hay in, and Mom's in on this one with me. And anyway, Dad got the barn built that weekend. The ice melted quickly in Georgia. So, having a life of freedom, I think, was really important and valuable, because a lot of times kids don't even have an opportunity to go chase a horse with a squirt gun.
Right. Yeah, they're too insulated.
We are very insulated.
That's a good example too of freedom involves a certain amount of risk and a lack of security. I mean, if you hadn't, yes, you could have gotten hurt getting kicked like that, but at the same time, you had this opportunity to pursue things and to pursue creativity. And I think that probably plays a part in your story as you go along.
Yeah, because when you are allowed to think, and we are so inundated with stuff now, that children in particular, and I am a grandma of 14, which is like the best part of your life.
A lot of kids.
And having them come to the farm where we are now and have the freedom to go outside. No, you're not watching TV. No, you may not have my phone. No, you go play. We got a creek in the front yard and a trampoline and swings. And it's like, just go be a kid. And, I am a mom of 8 children, blended family, birthed 5. My current husband had 3, so we're blended. But I raised them for the last 25 years. And part of that became homeschooling them, which, Jake and I's, I don't know if you know this, but Jake and I's path crossed many, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
When he was playing, I think it was soccer, I guess,
yeah.
and my older sons were playing soccer. And anyway, when we met each other officially, we went, wait a minute, we know each other. And so we connected that back to the soccer field with the boys on the field. But knowing that you have space, right, to just be. And I can remember sending the kids outside with books, and who reads a real book anymore, right? It's like I give my grandchildren books. Exactly, yes, exactly. And it's like, go outside and lay on the hay bale and read a book in the sunshine, Go just be a part of the world and have quiet time. One of the horsemen in my life that I learned a lot from, his name is Jack Vance, and he is in Kentucky, but he would say, we don't have time to just dream. Take time to just dream, just be. And so few people can just go be. They don't want the silence. They're afraid of the silence. They don't want those thoughts. And that's where you have to really get solid in your walk with the Lord. Is that, when you're can you deal with silence? Because how does God speak to us?
Quietly. Still small voice in the quiet. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Not in the wind, not in the thunder.
Right.
Not in the earthquake.
Right. And so if we don't find those quiet moments to just go be still, how are we going to hear his voice? And yet that, I think, is one of the ways Satan really distracts us, is that we constantly have input.
It goes back to Shakespeare, the ravings of a madman full of sound and fury. Right?
Yeah. You had good homeschooling.
Oh, yeah.
Quoting Shakespeare.
Married to an English teacher.
I have a question. Do you think, in your opinion, that the reason... there's no doubt that generations before your parents and their parents, there was a disconnect between the amount of attention that the children got. So... your kids probably got more attention than you got, and you probably got less attention than your parents got. And it seems like now we've worked our way to we give our kids too much attention, and they don't have the opportunities, whether it be for safety's sake or geographical location, that they don't just go out and be kids. I stayed in the woods, stayed in the creek. I don't have woods technically where I live at, I had at my neighborhood. There's a different feel. I've had instances that have made me want to be more insulated with my family, legitimate safety issues in my neighborhood that are bad, newsworthy bad. And I live in a decent neighborhood. And what do you think the equation is there? What do you think the reasoning is there? Do you think your parents cared less and they let you just go out and take more chances? Do you think we care too much and we try to protect our kids too much? Do you think it's a mix of both? What's your opinion?
So I think that no one cares less.
Okay.
Right? I don't think that's even part of the deal.
Okay.
I think that we want to not allow someone to fall and stumble. I think that we want to, I learned that lesson, therefore I'm going to not allow you to go through it because it was challenging for me. Right? And it's almost I care more. Not less. But at the same time, one of the philosophies, and like I said, I lived my whole life based on philosophies that fall back to Christian principles. And so one of the philosophies is, God says we learn in the challenges. We talked earlier this morning, Jake, about this beautiful arena, but how did you get here? You had to go through some literally fiery challenges to get to this beautiful arena. And so as we as parents, all parents, even the parents that are, unless they have serious mental health challenges or substance abuse issues where they're not in their right mind, if you will, you love your children and you want to do best by your children. And so children naturally love their parents. Even children that are abused and have trauma love their parents. A sexually trafficked woman goes back to her abuser 7 times before you can get them out of that cycle. And so because they
That's
feel
a biblical statistic.
Yes. And so, how do we say the parent doesn't care as much or the parent cares too much? So I don't think the caring is the part. I think it's what is your philosophy on what you're trying to teach your child? And if your philosophy is, as Jake said, I challenge him to be better, right? I'm going to call him out on things, but he knows that I love him. He's like one of my 8 children. I now have 9, and with Deborah, I have 10. So Betsy, I have 11. I keep adopting children, right? And so the idea is that I have to allow that child to learn their own lesson because they learn differently. Right? And so what worked for me may or may not work for them. And my insulating them from that challenge is actually harming them because they're not able to grow. So if you live in an area that you go, it's not, because we were like you're outside all day long, be home at dark, right? And so in today's world, that's hard to do.
Can be.
Right? I have a daughter that won't go to the grocery store with her 3 children by herself because she's had several men in the parking lot come up and talk to her children and make her feel very uncomfortable, And she's like, you need to back away. You are too close to my family, right? And so now she has them bring the groceries to her car so she doesn't have to deal with the people in the parking lot. That's a scary way to live your life. But in her mind, that's a safety issue for her children.
Sure.
Right? So if the husband's with them, then they go together as a family, whatever. Is she protecting her children too tightly? No, she's trying to keep them safe, right? So the world we live in is differently. But how do you then set up challenges for them in a safe environment that they can still learn those lessons?
You have to adapt, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, and you have to have, you have to adapt, but you also have to have that word that we started with, intentional, in mind of how do I challenge this child, right? Because some children naturally challenge themselves, and some children need to be challenged and need to be drawn out into, oh, you can do this. Because how do we build confidence? We build confidence by failure, not by success. Right? So if I never have an opportunity to skin my knees, I'm never going to learn to walk. Right? So it's allowing them to live life as a 2-year-old or live life as a 10-year-old, and that they make choices and they have consequences. In the world of Healing Strides, we work with a lot of kids that don't understand choices and consequences because they've never had to suffer, quote unquote, the consequences of their choices.
That's probably generational too. Like I look at we're both in the early 40s, and close enough. Close enough.
It's okay. I'm old enough to be both your mothers. It's all good.
And I think
You're still
about
young men.
our generation and younger. You think about big events, wars, like that really affected.
Yes.
I'm not saying the ones recently haven't affected us, but it's affected us differently. But like when the whole country has to come together to build a product so that the world continues, or the great.
About how many kids now don't even remember 9/11?
Right.
Because they weren't alive.
Right.
Perfect. Adults now don't remember that.
Yeah, the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Just simpler times. In having to, as a generation, suffer or do without. I would go out on a limb to say the majority of people our age and younger most people really can't say they've gone without a ton. And there's certainly situations where people have less than and are really hard off, but
as a nation and as a population.
Yeah, and then that sets a tone for society and how things are done in parenting and the workplace and production and all of that. So I'm not saying I want us to set up something, we need another suffering, but it matters. It does matter.
It does matter.
You had a whole generation of people that came out of the Great Depression who knew what value meant, I didn't have it, now I got it, I'm going to pay a little extra for it because it really matters, and I want a really good product, and I'm going to take care of it till it wears completely out.
Yeah, we're such a throwaway society now.
Yeah, and with people too.
And absolutely. Well, and at both ends of the spectrum, right? One of our sons is a pastor up in Canada, and they have that law up there of assisted suicide.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it breaks my heart that if you call for help, they're like, oh, Well, do you really think that you're helping your society by continuing to live? I mean, that's the conversation they have with their medical
Holy
providers.
smokes.
What part of Canada, just out of curiosity?
He's actually over in Alberta. So
Alberta.
they're a much more conservative part of
For
Canada.
sure. I have some family there too, in Canada, not in Alberta, but in Canada.
Not in the conservative.
Not in the conservative. Well, there's a small pocket of conservative people, but yeah, that,
Right.
I read about that the other month when it came out, and
But we're moving that same direction in our country. Right? and so from birth to death, both ends of the spectrum are like
Disposable.
you're just yes.
Yeah.
And so our whole world is disposable, and so children again are not taught the value of something that's living. They're not taught the value of life. You know, I had one of my daughters call me and say, "Mom, I just want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of having animals on the farm,
Yeah.
where we understood death was a cycle and a part of life, and that, you know, she has people in her lives that don't understand that." Right? And she's like, I understand that we have to sometimes make hard decisions because, you know, the dog is dying, the horse is dying, they're not going to get better. And then people try to carry that over into human life. But God has made a very hard distinction between human life, because we are in the image of God. The dog, I love him to death, and the horse is majestic, and we all here love the horse. But the horse is not made in the image of God. Right? And so there's a different value or set of values
Right.
on the human life. And I think we've forgotten that, or we don't think about that as a whole generation of people. And it goes back to your question of parenting and how do we raise those children in today's world, right?
yeah, when we try to set the standard, like that's why having faith and basing things off of biblical principles make a big difference, because if you go off of that script, now you're setting the standard, you're setting the principle, and we're not. We will fail at that mission
Right.
every time,
Every
because
time.
then you're, okay, what's taboo to you? It may not be taboo to me, or what's the social norm for me might not be for you. And then there's no line. You know, you got to have a line in the sand. And if it's you calling the shots, it's not going to work out.
Well, and there was a time, you were talking about generations past, there was a time, even into my generation, that we had a standard of morals,
Sure.
right?
For the most
And
part.
we're moving farther and farther away from a standard that's just normal acceptance of what is considered right and wrong. And that goes back to that, what Jake started too with was truth and love, right? We say that there is no absolute truth if you're not a believer, and that therefore what I believe is truth, and my truth may be different than your truth, and that's scary.
I think
Right?
that's a big part of this whole conversation. Is one of the reasons that it feels like maybe we're not putting as much time into our kids or something is because there's so much information available. We're constantly, like, we don't have to think about how to do something anymore. We just YouTube it, right?
Yeah, it didn't work this morning.
Different story. But that's our instinct, that's our reaction. And and that produces in us a lack of confidence in ourselves to figure it out, or a lack of patience to wait for the answer or spend the time to figure it out. And just like the kids having to fall down and skin their knees, it's the process that teaches us more than actually learning the application.
Right.
Right? It's the
journey.
doing and the journey
Yeah.
that creates us more so than it is the ability to do whatever it is we're trying to do. And
Right.
that's where, going out, if, you go back times past, okay, let's go pioneer days, right? They had a Bible and they had nature and they had whatever they learned through their journey. And if you send your kids out to read on the hay bale with the book, then they have the time to think. They have the time to figure it out. If they can't go look at the phone, if they can't go look at the tablet, they have the time to work through the things and to create the games and to create the fort, and that
Right.
teaches them all of the things that go along with that. And I think it's not that information is bad. I mean,
Right.
to a very real sense, we have great ability. I mean, you look at like AI, all the things that we can do with AI now.
So scary to
Are,
me.
yeah, well, and it's incredible.
Right.
And it increases efficiency tenfold. But, okay, what happens when something goes wrong and you have to do it on your own and you've never learned how to actually create?
Well,
Right.
critical thinking.
Right.
We're not teaching our kids critical thinking anymore. And I read a book, I can't remember.
That's
the
an
author.
advanced placement
Yeah,
class. My wife
exactly.
teaches it.
But it's The Extinction of Hurry is the name of the book. And I can't remember who wrote it because I'm bad at that. But it was really talking about how our cell phones and our computers and all of the things that the technology that we use makes us go so fast because everything is instant. Everything is like right there, right now, all the time. And that we don't take the time to develop critical thinking skills. And, if you go back and that he in this book, he's like, children should never have screen time, ever, ever. And I remember when I was a kid, my dad took the TV out and threw it at the, he threw it out. It's like, no more TV. And
Listen
I'm
to too many John Prine
right.
songs.
It's like, okay, so he threw out the TV. What do? We put a screen. You go to a restaurant and these kids are sitting there at 18 months old
Right.
watching a screen. So the parents have a minute to be quiet because both parents are working, right? And so they want that minute of quiet. And I get it, but at the same time, like China doesn't let their children have screen time until they're like 10, 12, 13 years old.
Really?
Yeah, because they're like, we know what it does to the brain.
Oh, wow.
And in this book, it talks about and I'm not endorsing this book so much because he's a pastor and I don't agree with everything he put in the book, biblically speaking. I wasn't keen on everything he said. So I want to make that very clear. But he talks about the rewiring of our brain because of the technology that we have. And so therefore our brain is physiologically not working the way our grandparents' brains worked, right? And my parents' brains worked because we've rewired it for this immediate quick response, and that's not how life is, right? So it's like, how do we slow down?
We've made ourselves ADD.
Yeah, yes.
We created
he
this
says,
problem.
this was one of the statistics which I thought was crazy. He's like, the human right now has a focus point of, you can have an attention span of 9 seconds. That's crazy. Now, he said, to put that in perspective, a goldfish has 12-second attention span. So what are we teaching our children?
Yeah, yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's why they get these reels or whatever, TikTok, whatever those things are, that are like fast, 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 fast. And I'm like, I can't even see what that is. But your brain is seeing it, right? And commercials are fast, fast paced. And it's like, okay, can we just breathe?
Yeah.
Just breathe. When we're working, as you all do, when we're working with the veterans with the horses, that's the biggest piece we want to see, right?
Right.
Take that breath.
Yeah.
Or release that breath, wherever they are, right? What is that slow down piece for you?
Yeah, when you think about peace, you don't think about busy or fast.
Yeah.
That's not the word that comes to mind. We say here in our program that we want to rewire the brain, we want to reshape the heart, and we want to restore the soul. And it's biblically, based. And you're right. I mean, I can sit here and think about me. I can think about my kids and think about the busyness and the necessity of some of it is there. You do need to be able to pick up the speed and change gears and go a little faster at times. But I think you really should have to be intentional about shifting down gears and slowing down and be intentional about that for your kids' sake and your mental health and your safety and all that stuff too. And we do, I call it concentration week, but it's consecration week at church. And it's
Yes.
actually starting Sunday because it takes some concentration to
Yes,
get through
it
it.
does.
And I was dinner with some friends last night, and we start, I guess, Sunday. And, it's probably going to be virtually with the weather coming in. But I'm going to do it this year, and it's going to be, I'm going to try to do it in its entirety, and I'll probably mess up. But that's going to be my intentionality to slow down, to take the phone and somehow or another, I'm going to have to disable it. There's
power button on there?
There is.
I have learned about
Right,
that.
but I
You
do
can
need it to
actually turn
ring.
it off.
I do need it to ring for the sake of work, and emails. But the other stuff occupies
Right.
as much or more time than that does. So let me pick what I can control and cut that off.
Yeah.
Because I don't get a book and go sit at a hay bale.
Right.
And I know that.
Yeah.
And the flesh of me wants to say, well, that's fine. Don't worry about it. But I know it's problematic. So, I think the intentionality part's huge. We have to be forcefully intentional about,
Right.
no, we're not going to turn the television on.
Right.
And it's the first 5 minutes are horrible with the kids or with you because you're fighting yourself
Right.
or I'm bored.
I used to tell my kids boredom is a choice. There's a toilet that can be cleaned.
Right,
Yeah,
Right.
buddy.
right.
There's
So-
a stall that can be mopped, right?
But 10 minutes later, you're looking around like, ooh, it's quiet. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on? And you look in the room and he's in there doing something.
Yeah.
Right.
And she's in there doing something. They figured it out.
Yeah.
But I don't even let them figure it out half the
Right.
time.
That's
Shame
right.
on me. But yeah, interesting. You have to slow down.
The other thing that came up as you were saying that I think is equally important is that balance piece. Right? People say to me all the time, how do you do all the things that you do and stay so positive and stay happy and and I've really kind of done some self-reflection on, I don't feel like I get a lot done. I don't, I get my stuff done, but when I scale it and go, wow, I really do get a lot done. How do I do that? Because that's in that mentoring role that I like to do with people, is to be able to say, what is it that makes it different? What is it? But I'm pretty well balanced, right? But on top of that, I'm also very present. Because you were talking about, our brain says there's 14 million things back here I should be doing or could be doing or want to be doing or whatever. But if I'm totally focused with where I am, I had lunch with a donor yesterday, and she's like, you've got to be so distracted because you're preparing for the storm that's coming in this weekend. You probably should be back there. And I said, no, I'm supposed to be right here. This is where we are right now. Let's enjoy this hour that we have together. And she went, oh, okay. And then we had a great lunch. But she was worried about me being worried.
Right.
And I wasn't worried. And so being able to slow down enough to say,
This is now,
this is now.
and that is later.
Yeah, and I'm in the
There's
moment.
an order to all of that.
Well, and to be present and not have to continue to think about all those other things.
Right.
This is amazing. I love having this conversation with you all. So
Yeah.
thank you again for having me.
Surely that's a combination of things, though, right? Like,
Absolutely.
walk us through that. Like, that's important because, I need to hear it too. We all need to hear it. So it's probably a confidence in, let's say they're getting ready for the storm. Let's use the exact thing. You have probably great confidence in your staff that you've put together, right? So that gives you one more ability to be less distracted, right? You've built that. That didn't accidentally happen.
Right.
That doesn't come just by slowing down. You probably, you can toot your own horn as much as you probably have confidence in yourself, right? Because you've lived a life long enough to know failure and success, and you're not afraid of taking that time. Like someone younger, even use myself as an example, may be like, I don't have the wisdom that you may have, and be like, oh, well, I've got to be worried about that because I haven't lived long enough to realize that it'll work itself out, or it doesn't need all of my attention. That comes with time as well. But
What's a confidence? That goes back to the identity piece and the imposter syndrome that the devil will trick us with, of knowing that your wisdom and your guidance and your strength don't come from you as a person.
Right.
You're guided by something much greater than that. So whether your human self feels like it should be worried or feels like it should be stressed, your steps are guided.
Right.
Right.
And I think, you said step through that, and you answered it beautifully, because what we have to do as humans is get out of our own way. Right? We get in our own way all the time. If I allow my brain, like people say, how? I'm like, I don't do anything. I wake up in the morning. I do get on my phone because I do my devotions on my phone every morning. My dear precious husband brings me coffee in bed.
We all have feet of clay.
That's right. Yes, we do. That's right. And that is where I start my day. And it's, God, what are we doing today? Because I really, truly make plans, but then I don't know. Sometimes I have this whole book laid out, and I still keep a paper calendar. And I'm like, here's what I'm doing. And God says, no, that's not what you're doing today. Today, you're going to be available because someone's going to walk through that door, and they're going to need you to pray with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then people walk in my door, and I'm like, oh. And you know, we witness to people because they know who we are. But that's the non-believer that then walks in my office and says, I know you've got this relationship with God. Would you pray? And I'm like, yes, right now. Yeah, let's pray right now. And being able to be available and not have it so. One of the other things this long life has given me is that there are very few things that really have a hard line. Right? We put these deadlines on us. Now, if you're writing a grant and it says it needs to be there before midnight, you better be hitting that button at 11:59. Right?
Know what a real emergency is a big part of it. Yeah.
Right. And not allowing other people to wreck your schedule, because that's the other thing we do, right? You get 500 emails and you let that guide you. You were going to say something. Go ahead.
I think you was going to say amen.
I was thinking about, in this evolution that you've been mentoring me through, early on, I put a ton of pressure on myself to accomplish things that I thought my superiors required of me, when in fact they did not. Mm-hmm. I required that of myself, whether it was the time that it needed to be accomplished in, or something that I thought was important that they did not feel was that important. But I had so much pressure on me, and in the first couple of years here, I did a lot of damage to my marriage just by putting so much time in that I was requiring of myself to please other people.
Right.
Who did not require that of me in order to be pleased with me. So that's, I think
I remember having a conversation a little bit around that.
Yeah, we did. And, it's just, we wreck ourselves 9 times out of 10 on that stuff.
Yeah, we do.
All right, we went down a really cool rabbit hole there, but
That's what the podcast is for.
in your story, you're still 7 years old, and we got a long way to go.
God. Golly, Dave, we're still at 7. I've jumped.
If she's only 35, like how far do we really have to go?
Right.
Attaboy. We better accelerate a little bit. We
Yes.
slowed down.
I will accelerate that, because my life, I was a child that had loving parents, loving family, loving grandparents, all of the support that anybody could ever ask for. And not that bad things don't happen to you along the way, right? Because we have our struggles, we have things that have happened that you go, ugh, am I ever going to get past that? So I got married when I was 18, had 5 children, got divorced when I was 38, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a beautiful part of my life. I have amazing children that are all very successful, and I'm very proud of them. And I would never give up that 20 years, right? If I had to go back and do it again, I'd do it exactly like I did it. Now, I wouldn't want to get the divorce, all of those things, but I don't know that there's anything I could have done to change that part of it, because it takes 2 in a marriage, right? And I love that you acknowledge that, hey, I was doing some things that I needed to revisit, right? Yeah. And so married to an incredibly wonderful man now that is a Christian. We've been married 25 years. We've raised our children together, homeschooled 8 kids. They are all very successful children in their own right. And
can we take just a minute to recognize the fact that after a 20-year marriage ended, that was not the end of a story or the end of happiness in your life, but that you've almost lived a whole nother lifetime since then. And I think for a lot of people that are going through that situation in particular, especially when you're at that 40 mark and you're kind of at that transition point in life from early life to later life or whatever, it can feel like everything's over. Whether it's, we talk about that a lot with our veterans that come in here. The people that come to Healing Strides. Yeah. Something so big in your life ends, and it just feels so catastrophic that you don't think you can get past it. And yet, here's your story, 25 years later. Yeah. So carry on.
Well, no, that's actually really good for slowing me down, because I tend to be, as I said in the moment. Now, what are we doing right now? And I don't go back to those things. But I taught at First Baptist Church in Roanoke for 7 years, divorce care.
Oh, wow.
Right? And then I taught a book called Beginning Again, because it was really excruciatingly painful. And my sister's like, I just don't get it. And I'm like, good. I don't want you to get it. I don't want you to know the pain that I've had to feel. I don't want you to know the hardships that divorce causes to your children and to, we think it's you and the husband, right? Or you and the wife, depending on where you are, that's splitting, but you're breaking everything in your entire life. You're not just breaking this marriage, you're breaking everything. And a lot of times when you're in it, you don't realize that, right? You don't realize that it's affecting every piece of your entire life, your friendships, your children, your church, it's everything. It's that drop the pebble in the water and the ripples go out around you. And maybe the people over there aren't quite as affected, right? I almost lost my very best friend. And she called me a year later and said, I need to talk to you. And now we're best friends again. But it was a really, really hard part. But part of my faith journey was there were days that I didn't want to get out of bed. Here I'm homeschooling 5 children. Now they're little children, but sometimes that's easier and harder. The baby was 18 months at that time. And so I couldn't get out of bed. I was so depressed. And one day I got up and I looked in the mirror, and this is terrible, but I hadn't brushed my teeth for 3 days, hadn't had a shower. I was miserable. And I'm looking in the mirror and God says, this is not who you are. This is not who I created you to be. Stand up, brush your teeth, take a shower, and go live your life. Right? And people are like, was he that direct? Yeah, he was that direct. Now, were those my own voices in my head? Yeah, but no. That's how God talks to us sometimes, is our own voice in our head. Right? And so I did that. And then I went, you know what? This is not who I am. This is not what God called me to be. There's so much more. Right? And at that point in time, we had a bunch of horses. Imagine that. And my ex-husband was like, they're hay burners, sell them all. We're done with horses. You're done. Well, I sold all but my children's 4 horses, right? But he didn't see the value. And here I am, this many years later, and my whole life is pretty much wrapped up in horses still. And so there was no seen value in that. So that was a very, very tough time. But you have to get to a place that God created you. If you are blessed, lucky, choose your word, enough to have a partner in this life, that you are meant for each other, or whatever, again, choose your words, that you are willing to do the work to keep that marriage together, because it's work. I'm married 25 years now, so I've been married 45 years, just to 2 different people. But that 25 years hasn't been easy. Right? We've worked very hard to say we're going to do this God's way. And
if you stop working, that's usually when it breaks.
Exactly. And sometimes you don't realize you've stopped working.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you look up and you go, wait, I don't even know who this person is, right? So, it's back to being intentional and back to that word balance of that we're putting all of our life pieces together in such a way that they can go this way nicely instead of this way, right? Because my priority list is God is first. If God is first, the rest of it tends to fall into place. But after that is my husband. And that's difficult when you have a mixed children marriage, right? Because it's like his kids, my kids, we've never said that. We've always said they're our kids. And so he and I got on that page really early. And so having the ability to say, God is first, my husband is second, and then my children, then my church, and then work. Well, y'all know how much I do with Healing Strides. So it's like, okay, if you're doing that here, how do you have time for that? But that's that priority. That's that balance. That's that find quiet time. That's that be intentional. We are blessed that 4 of our 8 children live close enough that we all go to the same church. And so we see them every Sunday. I'm really super blessed that a couple of my daughters work at Healing Strides. So that's another really huge part of, having this legacy, if
Yep.
you will.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's big stuff. And to say that a divorce is not ever good, but sometimes it's necessary,
Right.
right? And so to be able to say, if you are truly seeking God's will, He will heal those wounds. And there are marriages that are dangerous, and those marriages they're probably not really a God marriage anyway, but yes, help people get out of those dangerous marriages, when abuse is happening to children or spouse. But that's not the end.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, it's
the
not-
beginning of a new thing, right?
Not the unpardonable sin either.
Right. Oh, yeah.
We get that a lot
Yeah.
in our culture here in the South, especially in the
Yes.
church. It's you kind of blackballed if that's where your life has gone, regardless of the reason, and that's done more damage.
Yeah,
To
the church
people's
is not
faith.
perfect.
No.
The church has people.
Nobody in it is either.
Exactly. and God is pretty specific that
Yeah.
all sin, anything that takes you away from Him,
Right.
is sin.
Right.
And so one sin is not worse than the other sin. We as humans rank sin.
rank 'em, yeah.
Murder is worse than this is worse than this. That sort of thing. But divorce is not a death sentence. Divorce is not a life of miserable sentence. It's painful, it's hard, but you can heal from it, and God certainly forgives it. And what we find is that forgiveness has to be a part of divorce, because you're not going to go on. You're not going to survive it.
Right.
If you don't have forgiveness. And you have to be able to, and people say it's harder for me to give myself. Well, I can't really forgive you unless I've forgiven myself. But forgiveness is a gift to me. It's not, yes, you get the benefit of it, but it's a gift to me, because if I'm harboring the hatred and the hurt and the pain and all the things in my heart over you, then you're holding me captive.
Right.
Once I forgive and let go,
Yeah.
you no longer have that control over me.
Right.
Because I'm like, you know what, dude, you're on your own. This is the path. This is the path. And I've forgiven you, so you are on your own now.
Yeah, I think that's important for believers, because like the path to, like, if the divorce isn't, let's say it's inevitable for whatever reason, the path to that matters. Like, we want to have an easy pass to a divorce for selfish reasons, not righteous reasons, or not like legitimate reasons. And then you want the grace and the favor after that. You can't who are you to say, like, take care of me after the fact, and I didn't even listen to you along the way. Like, if you get to that point, you're like, divorce is inevitable, like I'm being abused, or this is not God honoring, there's no way out of it, this is not a marriage, and you get to that point, make sure you do the God honoring part to that decision, up to that decision, so that He can provide you with the grace and the favor and the answers afterwards. Because
Yeah, I'm going to push back on you on that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
God is bigger than that.
Yeah, okay. Explain.
We mess up.
Sure.
We're going to mess up.
Sure.
We're going to do the wrong thing. Yes, we should try those paths.
Right.
And you're going to fail miserably. You're going to fall on your face. You're going to be covered in mud. And God's still going to love you.
Sure.
God's still going to show you grace. Because at the end of the day, if you can get up and say, oh my God, I messed up so much once
Sure.
again, please, right? He's a God of forgiveness. And so sure, we as
Right.
believers, we want to try to do all those things. But if we're not careful, we start getting very legalistic.
Sure.
And so it's like, Jesus is very clear about legalism.
Right.
He don't want no legalism.
Right.
He wants us to have a relationship to Him. He
Right.
wants us to love Him. And in turn, He already has loved us. And that's a big part for us to understand, is that, okay, I did really mess that up. But God's big. It's like people, when I would teach divorce care, they would be like, oh, He's not going to forgive me. I was yelling at Him. God can handle your anger, y'all.
Sure.
Yeah.
He can handle you falling on your face and being in the mud. I mean, the prodigal son that came back literally from the pig pen, right?
The woman at the well, I'm sure she didn't pursue her 7 divorces or 5 divorces or whatever
Right.
it was in the proper way, and yet that's who Christ chose to reveal himself too
Yes.
as the Messiah
Yes.
before anyone else. I
Right.
mean, there's
Yeah.
not much of a clearer picture than that of,
Yeah.
is it wrong? Yes. Is it damaging? Yes. Are there consequences? Does it rip your whole life apart? Yes. 100%.
Right. You don't avoid the consequences.
God's bigger
right?
than that.
And God's bigger.
God's bigger than that. Like we deal with that in life and
Yeah.
on this earth, but as far as where we stand with God and whether God continues to love us, bless us, guide us, tell us to get up in the morning and brush our teeth, that's who He is, and that's the beauty of all of
Yeah.
that, I think.
Yeah. And to be able to know that we fall under grace. You know, that's another one of my big words is grace. You know, and sometimes it's easier to give grace, it's sort of like forgiveness, than to receive it. But God is just, I'm gonna get teary.
I didn't bring the tissues, Carol.
When you actually stop and say, who is God to me, right? Tozer said, how a man thinks, and man being human, how a man thinks about God is the most important thought he can think, right?
Because it informs all the other thoughts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you have to decide how big is your God.
So, all right, well, help explain this to me then. How do you account for we'll use the believer because it kind of applies more so, that has to walk through the beginning, the divorce, and the after, that says, I don't have the grace. I don't have it's miserable. Like they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're not feeling God's presence. And let's say the one that got the quick divorce because it was uncomfortable. Things weren't working. They didn't do it the right way. I don't know how to explain it better than that. And then take the one who thinks that they did everything they could, it just didn't work out. So one, you could almost, don't take it like literally, one you could say, I could see the fault there. Like no one was trying. God wasn't in it at all, or like they weren't and then the one that really tried, and both ended up in divorce. And I've seen instances where both feel like life is just over after, and whether the grace is there and they're not accepting it, or the whatever at the other end of it, but I see their life and it's not good after.
It's not good yet.
It's not, well, that's fair, but what do you
But for them,
what do
they're
you
in the
tell
middle-
that
they're
person?
in the
Because
middle of the dark
yeah,
swamp.
Yeah.
because you're telling a story of redemption and good and all that stuff, but
You talk about, sorry,
No, go ahead.
jumping in front of our
No,
guest
no,
here.
no. You're fine.
In marriage, you become one flesh. When that marriage separates, that one flesh is ripped apart. And it takes a long time for that to heal. I mean, just a long time for those wounds to close. And some of them probably never do. Or it may take years. And it's not, here's the thing about sin is the penalty for it has been paid. God doesn't hold us against it. You told me that the other day, that Jesus died for that.
Right.
I don't have to worry about that. Like, Jesus died for that. It's covered. We were talking about somebody else that was dealing with a similar issue, but that doesn't mean that the consequences go away. I mean, we talk about that with the guys all the time, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what's the line from "O Brother, Where Art Thou"? Your sins have been forgiven and your debt's been paid in the eyes of the Lord, but the state of Mississippi is a little more hard-nosed.
Still have that accountability piece.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Carol?
Yeah. So if you're asking the question, and I want to make sure that I'm hearing what you're saying, that, scenario is at the end of the day, the person is still feeling torn apart, rejected, the flesh has been torn apart, you've got gaping wounds, and they can't see that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So they're in the middle of it, and they're like, where is God? Mm-hmm. So is that?
yeah, more or less. Just because, I mean, you told us a beautiful story of, redemption. And I guess what I was trying to articulate earlier was like, I don't see how people walk through it without true faith, number one. Mm-hmm. And to me, my proximity to, I know I'm redeemed. I know I have a different life in Christ. that applies to everything, including my marriage. I know I have grace that has there's grace that I don't have any control over. I realize that. But the proximity of me and my walk with God, the closer I'm walking with him, the more I'm able to see that, the more evident it is in my life at times, sometimes not.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I was trying to say earlier is like, I see people get married and call it, in the eyes of God and say that they're Christians and stuff. But when the truth really comes out, when the rubber really meets the road, they're not really walking that out. And then the blame game starts, and then, God maybe even gets a part of that. And so I don't see how people can walk the path, number one, without faith. And number two, so if I'm walking it with faith and it's not making sense and I still end up at the divorce, that's kind of like what I think I would struggle with.
Yeah.
And
I think part of that is we are created as in the image of God, and we are created to serve others, right?
Sure.
So if we are created to serve, we have to find a place in our own world to say, how do I serve? And maybe that's I'm serving my children right now because that's the season I'm in my life. Maybe it's I'm serving at church. Maybe whatever service looks like to you. Maybe it's I'm serving at Valor Farm, I'm serving at Healing Strides. I'm serving my community because God created us to give, because it's greater to give than to receive. And I remember during those really, really dark times listening to Stephen Curtis Chapman and his song, The Next 5 Minutes, right? And because I thought, I can't do this. I've got 5 babies. I'm on my own. I can't do this, right? But that song says, do 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Glorify God for 5 minutes. That's all you get. We talk about, well, we got today, we don't have tomorrow. Well, in that case, all I could see was the next 5 minutes. And I listened to that song over and over and over and over and over and over. And it's about 5 minutes. So, you glorify God. And if you can get in front of, I think probably the best advice is to tell that person, don't try to do this by yourself. Because if you're in the muck and the mire and the grit and the grime of it, you don't want to be by yourself. You can't do it by yourself. And if you don't have the faith to know that God is there with you, find somebody that's going to help you. Mm-hmm. Find somebody that has that faith that you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're crying your eyes out because you don't know what you're going to do for the rest of your life, right? Find somebody that loves you enough that you can mirror that if this human, I love that Jake tells me he loves me. I tell him I love him. But I love that because I know that if I'm broken down along the road and I call Jake, he would come help me, right? And to have those people in your life that you can call and say, hey, we've got an emergency. And my emergency right now is I can't see straight because I'm so overwhelmed with depression or grief or whatever the issue that you're in. We are not created to be by ourselves. We are created for community. We are created to serve that community. If we don't have people around us that lift us up, let's go back to Moses and Aaron and help me holding his arms up, right? Thank you.
Joshua?
Either way, we know there's 2 men helping Moses hold his arms up. Because I know right now we're going to all be questioning that. Bad example, Carol, you didn't have the answer. But knowing that we have to have help. Even leaders have to have help. Especially leaders have to have help. Surround yourself. You talked about the great people that I had at Healing Strides. Well, it's because I intentionally hire other bosses, right? I want to hire somebody that can stand on their own 2 feet and do their job.
Right.
But you want friends like that too. You
like to hire people that I have to out hustle.
Yeah, there you go. And know that person that's walking through that muck needs to just, that still quiet moment, very, very hard to find when you're in the middle of a storm. But if they can find that, whether it's in solace with another human or just finding, get their praise, like the other song that I absolutely wrecks me these days is Jelly Rollin'.
Hard Fought Hallelujah.
Oh my gosh, right?
I'll tell you a story about that one later.
What an amazing song that is. But get something that just wrecks your heart for God. And listen to it over and over again.
Actually, I'll tell you now.
Tell me now, please.
I'll tell you now, and then we're going to jump back into to your story because I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about Healing Strides. But so gets through up to where did Healing Strides come into this mix?
Yeah, so we're fast forwarding again, which is good. In my world, I designed and built log houses, right?
Okay.
And so I was a designer and had really, really great success at that. But log homes are typically secondary vacation homes for people. They're not primary residences, at least back then they weren't. And the world changed. That economic crisis we had in 2008. The bottom kind of fell out of everything I was doing. And I went, I guess that means I need to do something different, right? So still had horses in my life, raising the kids, homeschooling. They would go to work with us when we would go take delivery of a house. And I was like, what am I going to do? So a friend of mine called me, and I had not really heard of Healing Strides. I think I'd been down to a ribbon cutting a couple of years earlier or something, but I didn't really know what it was about.
Yeah, it opened somewhere right around 2099, maybe, right?
It opened in 1991.
Really?
Yeah, so we're 35 years old this year. Yeah.
Okay.
We got to that property in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
Right.
remember
You remember
seeing
that
it
date.
come-
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, because I was driving that road, and then I was about 16, so
Okay.
I remember seeing the banners and the signs and hippotherapy. What the heck?
What is
Who's
that?
got a hippo?
I've told kids we keep them in the creek. It's okay, they're out in the creek. So I went down there and just was volunteering,
Okay.
right? And then she said, hey, could I pay you a little bit of money to feed a couple of horses? Well, they had 3 horses that were all older and lame, and they only served children because of the horses, right? Like, okay. Well, the gates were broken and off hinges, and some fences were broken, and they didn't have a lot of solid fencing. They had mostly paneled fencing, and I'm like, okay. Now I had 22 horses at my house.
Holy smokes.
I'm like, okay, I can help these 3 horses, right? Well, fast forward, they had gotten a grant and they needed some help teaching because they needed to get this grant used up. And so, could you help teach? Sure, I can help teach. I've been teaching writing lessons since I was a kid, I'm happy to do that. And just got involved, and the board came out, and they were volunteering and doing some things, and they were like, "Hey, would you like to work here?" And I'm like, "I don't have anything else to do now." I was working part-time at Carilion Hospital in the pediatric clinic, managing their early intervention program, and I said, "Okay, well, I could use another part-time gig, so I could bring my kids to Healing Strides with me, right?" Couldn't bring them to the hospital. They weren't too keen on that. But so it just started being there. And the more I was there, the more God started planting a seed that this could be an amazing place, right?
That's how they get you.
Huh?
That's how they get you. That's how they get you.
Sound familiar, Bob?
That's how they get
It's the story.
This-
You
Why
just
don't you
go-
come help with this?
Exactly. I just have a little project for you. And so, again, fast forwarding, I ended up bringing 11 of my horses, as my daughter Morgan says, you took all of our horses, our best horses, down to Healing Strides, which was true, I did. But then I added adults, and I was able to start building that, the world of Healing Strides, and we just haven't stopped. Every year we have continued to grow and serve more people and serve more. And my heart is to serve as many as I can, and yet we all know that that comes with a price tag, right? And so where do you find that line to say, I can't serve you because I don't have money to back that?
Right.
And that's a really, I've never done that because my bleeding heart continues to bleed.
Carol, you had 22 horses. I think we know that no is not your best word.
Well, I have 8 children that no was my best word, so I can say no. But not when you're that hurting person. So I have had to learn that there are some boundaries there. And it's taken me a long time I'm really, really good at boundaries in certain areas, but the bleeding heart is the one I'm still learning, right? Morgan has helped me tremendously in going, and she doesn't call me mom at work. She calls me Carol. Carol, we don't have money for that. I know, but no, we don't have money for that. And so
I might need to spend some time with Morgan.
she's amazing. But knowing that you want to still help.
Yeah.
Right? Knowing that what do we need to do to get that money?
Right.
It motivates you to say, if I want to serve more people, I've got to continue to raise money. And you guys are a nonprofit here. You get that. If you don't have money, you don't function.
Yep.
And so, yes, you have some program money. Yes, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is, in order for us to serve and to help people, and you have the stories that come in and the people, a dear lady came in my office and she said, I just want to hug you. I want to tell you, you guys have saved my life. And I'm like, I don't know your story. And so she shared her story. But I'm thinking, how cool is that? That she felt we were open enough, right? We intentionally have windows everywhere. You and I've had this conversation, designed with windows so no one ever questioned what's happening in that room, right?
We took a lot of that into consideration when we designed this building.
Well, that's great, right? And so having the idea that she knew she could come and just say, you saved my life. And I didn't know, I knew who she was, obviously, but I didn't know her. So I need to go have coffee with her and really hear the rest of her story. Because we make a difference in lives that we don't realize.
Right.
We had a volunteer that wrote this phenomenal testimony for us about how this gave her, she had left a toxic work environment and just said, I got to take some time away from the world of corporate because it's toxic and it was dangerous for her and whatever. I don't know all of that detail. But she said she came down to Healing Strides as a volunteer and found her place. Right? And she says, I'm now building myself back and talked about the amazing team of people and how do you get these, because she was a boss where she was, right? And she's like, how do you get this quality of people in every aspect?
Right.
And we're not all Christians at Healing Strides, I've hired a lot of different diverse people and some of us are Christians, and that's great, and we're not going to be bashful about that.
Right.
But we're also not going to beat other people over the head with it.
Right.
It's like, here's who we are, and the way I typically open that conversation is, I don't know what your belief system is, but this is mine, and this is what has worked for me. Let me show you how it has worked for me. Because otherwise, they're not going to hear you anyway.
Right.
They're not going to listen to you. And so it's really beautiful to see a kid, say their first words. We had a group of children that were nonverbal children on the autism spectrum, a whole class of nonverbal. And so I was blessed enough to be out there that day working with the kids and teaching. And I am using sign language. I'm like, do you want more or are you all done? And he looks at me and says, I want more. Those were his first words at 7 years old. Never spoken, a whole sentence. And I'm like looking at the teachers and they're crying and I'm like, what is this? And they're like, he's never spoken.
Wow.
And so of course we went some more and then I did it again and he said it again. And so I said to the teacher, come out here and let him tell you he wants more. So we can transfer. So then he started talking in the classroom, but we wanted to transfer that to outside of the arena.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we were doing another field trip, and I did not get to be a part of this one, but Betsy and Ashley were out there, and they're like, all these children were in wheelchairs, and they're like, this kid's not going to get on the horse. This kid's not going to cooperate. This kid is our worst kid. He never does anything. And the teachers were just blowing him up, and Betsy does her magic because she's amazing.
Betsy's special.
She is amazing, and she's able to get this child on the horse. And he had cerebral palsy, so he was really tight. Well, their OT had come, and so as he's walking around, his legs are starting to loosen up because the movement of that horse is loosening up his body. And he puts his hands out, and he says, I'm flying. right? And of course, Ashley's crying, Bessie's
Yeah,
crying,
I was
I'm
gonna
crying
say,
because they're telling me the story.
Nobody wasn't crying.
But it's like, that's the power of what we do,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and that's the thing too, you talked about the funding part of it, is we understand that power. We've seen that power.
Oh my
We've
gosh,
seen
yes.
what these horses can do. I mean, they've wrecked all of us at some
Yeah.
point in our life.
Physically and emotionally.
True.
Yes, true.
True.
Full disclosure.
Yes, that's right. My back still aches.
But the clinical world is only starting to realize the value that's there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, starting to realize that, hey, the movement of a horse can unlock the tightness that comes from cerebral palsy. It can unlock the nonverbal autism. And there's very little else that can do those things. So you have been building this for years with others in the industry of pushing towards the clinical world, understanding that and agreeing to fund it. And we're only now, and even still now, I mean, and for those of you that don't know, in order to get an insurance company to cover this service, it has to be, there has to be a clinically licensed person in that session. So it is very hard to offer this to the public without enormous, donation-based funding, essentially, or grants. So that's a struggle, and the amount of time and work and effort and belief you've put into building that facility and that team, and I honor you for that, because that has not been. I know from the little bit of time that I've spent doing it here, it is not easy,
Right.
at all.
Right.
And you started years ago, so I'm
18 years in July.
I'm building on a foundation that you've laid in many ways. So, all right, tell us more about, you started working down there, and then when did you take over running Healing Strides?
So 2009, I went down in 2008 as a volunteer, and by 2009, I had started getting my certifications, and the board, I was working part-time, but the board came to me and said, would you help us, because we're going to close if you don't. And I went, oh, well, that's not.
Again, back to the funding.
And by the way, if you want to get paid, you have to raise the money.
Again, back to the funding.
And so I'm like, yeah, I think we can do that. So we took it from, when I started, they were serving about 15 people a week. And within that first year, the other side of that was they were $140,000 in debt. So I started kind of behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, and there wasn't a lot there at that time. I mean,
Right.
it was
But
an older barn.
It was there was an older barn at the top that
Yeah.
a snowstorm like we're expecting this weekend took down, basically broke
Right.
all the big timbers in it.
Yeah.
So we had to remove it because it
That
was
was
going
like
to fall.
09, 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they were in debt for the arena roof, right? So the main arena roof they had put in,
Okay.
but it was more shade.
I didn't realize that arena was there at that point.
The arena was not there, just the roof was there. There was no fencing. They had panels up, but
Okay.
they were $140,000 for the roof alone. Yeah. And we were in porta-johns. There were metal sheds that one of them is used for a shade for the horses. We carried it down there. So that was, about 2009. So I went to work raising money to get the $140,000 paid off, and in the meantime grew the program from that 15 to 55.
Wow.
And that was done in about a year's time. And then I started saying, we need bathrooms down here. You can't. This is ridiculous. Porta-johns are not good. One of our people, oh my gosh, Deanna, went into the porta-john one hot summer day and a snake fell on her.
Oh,
She's like,
jeez.
I will never go in the porta-johns again. So we were like, okay, we need to have facilities. So I started raising money, and people introduced me to a lady and had told her she had lost her husband and her child, Hannah, in a car wreck on their way to riding lessons. And so she lost her husband and her daughter at the same time. And just devastating, right? Your whole world. But she wanted to do something to honor Hannah. And so we sat in Starbucks and cried for several hours, and on a napkin drew our community building. And that's called Hannah's House of Hope to honor her. And so people started saying, you know what, I want to do this. I want to help. And we continued to grow. And in 2016, we wrote a grant to start closing in the arena, and I was going to start just putting those wings on, right? So we started there, and God's hand is just incredibly tied into these things. And I will tell you a story just because it's really powerful. I told you I had a background in design, building. Well, God is giving me the vision of how I need to enclose this arena. And he says, you need to build the wings 33 feet. Well, as a builder, you don't build in odd numbers. Dimensional lumber comes in even numbers. Right. So the contractor's like, Carol, we're going to go ahead and go 34 feet. We're not going to go 33. I'm like, God said 33 feet. We are going 33 feet. So I've got a builder finally, and he's like, okay, we're going to do it. So we're building, and I get my permit in the fall. We're building. In March, the county calls me and says, you got to stop building. And I said, why do I have to stop building? And they would not tell me why. I'm like, okay, here's the deal. I'm not going to stop building unless you get a court order. They're like, we're not getting a court order, stop building. I'm like, no, I'm not going to stop building. I have a permit from you. I can build. So we made an agreement that we would meet on that Friday to talk about whatever they needed to talk about. But in the meantime, I told the builder, build as hard as you can. I don't know what's going on, but keep building. So I called our county supervisor at the time, Ronnie Thompson, and said, hey, could you meet me down here? I need your help on this. I don't know what they're doing. He's like, well, why won't they tell you? I'm like, I don't know. I'm asking. So we get down there. The meeting is set for 9:30. I get there at 9:20. They put me in a room. I'm waiting 20 minutes. They walk in 10 minutes late, and they all walk in together. And I'm like, I stood up because I'm like, this doesn't feel good. This is not right. And they're like, can you sit down? I said, no. They said, well, you got to stop building. And I said, you haven't told me anything yet. And this doesn't feel good to me. And Ronnie, bless his heart, said, Carol, please sit down. I said, for you, Ronnie, I'll sit down. So I sat down. And they said, you have to stop building. Now, they've come in and they've got books and books and books on all these things. I'm like, I'm not going to quit building. Tell me what the problem is. And they said, okay, we think you're building in floodplain. I went, oh, you do you?
Which is a big issue for them because they've given you the permit to build in the floodplain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me assure you
Right.
that God told me how to build this building, and you may not know where the floodwaters are going, but he does. And I am not in floodplain. Well, the building guy at the time said, I think I actually believe you. But the rest of them were like, we can't go for that. And I'm like, okay, all right. Now that we know what the issue is, what do you need me to do? And they said, well, you got to do a site plan. And I said, okay, what does that cost? They said about $15,000. I said, I'm a nonprofit. That's not in my budget. I can't do that. What's the first step you would need me to do? They said, well, you got to shoot these GPS signals, blah, 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 all the things.
Get a topo read.
Yeah. And I said, okay, what does that cost? And they said, oh, that'll be $400 or $500. I said, okay, I can handle that. Who should I call? And Ronnie says, call Cornerstone. Like, oh, that's the right name. We'll call Cornerstone. So sure enough, they come out, they do their thing. 2 weeks later, they call me. They say, we've got good news and bad news. I'm like, oh, I hate games. Can you just tell me? The good news is you're not in floodplain. I said, great. Then what can possibly be the bad news? They said, you're 1 foot out. So had I gone 34 feet, I would have been in floodplain. So we think God is not in the mix of things. Well, God is in the details, right? And so, he's always been there. He's always been a part of what we do down there. And I always give him the glory back to say, you know what? None of this belongs to anybody but him.
This goes back a little bit to, not a little bit, but it ties back into where we started with this of talking about the quiet and the listening. And and even the being willing to follow, because, standing up to a contractor as a woman in that situation and saying, no, we're not going to do the thing that makes sense. You're going to cut all the beams, all the trusses down. We're going to go 33 feet. And, being willing to look like the crazy lady to most people's estimation, and then being willing to face down the county and being willing to say, no, we're not going to stop building. Like, you have to make me. Like, the amount of courage that took, and the amount of confidence in who you were and what you had been told and what God had said is born out of that quietness and being able to listen. Mm-hmm. Without that, then you're just dealing with the information that you're fed, mm-hmm. right? And mm-hmm. you're blown by every wind of whether it's doctrine, law, reason, whatever it is. You're subject to that versus being rooted into the God that you know and the God that you trust.
Well, and you guys keep using that word confidence. And I'm not confident in Carol at all. I am confident in God. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when it's me, I'm a basket case. You know, I'm a terrible person. What I have learned is that through God, I am not. Mm. With God, I am not. But if I don't, you know, I said a long time ago, I saw this little sticker and it said, be the kind of woman that when your feet hit the floor, Satan says, oh crap, she's up. Right? And so I want to live that way. I want people to know that I'm making a difference for God. Mm-hmm. That, you know, whatever that looks like. And some days it is people thinking I'm totally crazy. And, you know, one of my, last year was tough. Financially, it was tough. You know, we lost the first 6 weeks of income mm-hmm. because the storms were crazy last yep. year, and we couldn't get people down there. You know, it was icy yep. and cold and ridiculous. We lost 6 weeks of income. Then we lost, you were talking about people respecting our work mm-hmm. and the power of the horse. Well, we had this great contract going, and we lost that contract because someone stupid somewhere along the way, you know, I get so...
not because of anything you did, but because of something that somebody did
somewhere else in the country.
Yes. Organization. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so the organization you were working with made a blanket policy, no more horses.
Right.
Right.
Right. And, you know, and that hurts so many people that were in the program.
Right.
And so it also goes back to, you know, your pursuit of excellence, mm-hmm. right? You know, the name of this podcast. And knowing that there are people out there that are not doing this right, and they're not doing it well, and they're not following rules, and they're not having the proper insurances, and everybody thinks we're all created equally. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, no, we're not. You know, do they have workers' comp? Mm-hmm. Most barns don't carry workers' comp on their employees. Right. You know, you can get away with some things because you're agricultural, so to speak, but at the same time, you can't. If you're in the industry of providing services right. for people that are hurting and wounded, and whether it's cerebral palsy or post-traumatic stress, mm-hmm. you better have your credentialing,
yeah.
right? And
trying to make equine fit into the corporate business insurance structure is complicated at best.
Right. But, you know, for example, workers' comp. Yeah. I know why people don't have it. Sure. You know, my admin people that are answering the phone and sending out invoices and collecting money, they're 100% programmed. They're not really admin. They're 100% programmed. Program mm-hmm. doesn't function if we don't bill and we don't collect money and we don't schedule, right? So 100% program. But I pay 39 cents per 100 for them. Mm-hmm. For my horse instructors, mm-hmm. my equine professionals, my mental health people that are around horses, mm-hmm. $8.69 per 100. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Anyway, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, it's relevant though, because that'd be a good talk one day.
Yeah. Saying you want to help people is one thing, but
right.
Being willing to do what it takes to do it and make the sacrifices there. It's not
and
easy.
To do it right and to do it well, and that has really, you know. Not that I haven't made mistakes and healing strides along the way. Absolutely, we all do. But the key is when you know better, you do better.
Yep.
You know, and as you learn, you say, "Oh, wow, I shouldn't have done that way." And then we get to move on, you know, and you do that forgiveness thing if you need to, and you go, okay, we're moving on. But you have to be a forever learner. Mm-hmm. If you stop learning, then you're going to not be successful tomorrow.
Right.
May work today, but what works today doesn't always work tomorrow. You know, even down to technology, you know, we have taken 5 of our software programs and have dumped them into one thing that, bless Morgan's heart, she's figured all that out, because I don't do technology. If you don't have legs on you, I don't care. But she's done all of that. It's saved us money, so that's really cool.
Yep.
But I don't have the mental knowledge to do that, back writing, all the stuff you have to do to build it. And so, those things are important because those things help us provide better service.
Right.
Now, I have to be willing to learn to say enough that I can make the decision, yeah, that's the right thing to do. Doesn't mean I have to know how to program it. Right?
Yep.
But I trust her, and it goes back to what you said, Bobby, about, how do we get those good people in the door?
Yeah, that's been interesting for me to learn in this organization and in life, but to be a good leader, or like a resilient leader that we teach as well, that you don't have to be a subject matter expert on everything under you. It's far more important to get the right stuff, the big stuff right, and have that squared away and bring those people in, because you can't do it all yourself anyway, right? When you realize that, you're really ahead of the game. And then B, the people you bring in underneath of you, it helps a lot if they can be subject matter experts. But my personality tends to want to be, all consuming, and I need to know that, and I need to know, the insecurity of being able to look good or shine because of someone else versus you accomplishing everything on your own. It's a little bit of letting go, a little bit of smart decision making, bringing the right people in. But that's a really important part. And you've probably obviously got that mastered or well along. Bringing in the right people, being the leader that you're supposed to be in the right areas, providing that wisdom, and letting those other people shine, because it's good for them.
Right.
And they're good at it. And you trying to figure it out, it's not going to do you a lot of good.
Right.
You do what you do good.
Well, and having what I call that 100,000-foot viewpoint, I've done the boots on the ground. And I loved, Jake said earlier, I've got to be able to outwork whatever. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that'll catch up with you.
No, that's not what I meant. I'm not trying to outwork. I'm not trying to outwork everybody, but what I mean is that I like to hire people who, if I don't do my job and keep working hard, they will pass me.
Yeah.
And not in the sense that I'm in competition with them, but I want them to have that much drive and dedication.
Well, and I love the way you said it, is let them shine, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, go for it.
Let them go.
Because I was like, no, don't think you have to help. So good. I'm glad you clarified that for my brain.
I want to hire people that I can see replacing me at some point.
Right, exactly.
Is kind of where I'm
at.
And
that's the kind of a philosophy too, is that you don't, in order to be sustainable, at the same time, you have to have a succession plan in play, right? Because if you're not bringing in people that have the ability to replace you or do this other part of the job, you're not sustainable.
Right.
Sustainability means there is a succession plan in play. And so, part of that is hiring the right people and allowing them, I loved the way you said it, allowing them to shine and be successful. Ashley is a rock star in all of the things that she does. And when she first started, I've known her for a long time, but when she first started, I would kind of go, okay, Ashley, this and this and this. And finally, she would do stuff. And I said to her, can you start telling me, hey, I got this? Because I feel like you got it, but I also feel like you're expecting me to say something. And I don't want to say something. So you can just say, hey, Carol, I got this. And now she'll say, hey, Carol, I got this. I'm like, great. And I know that she's going to do it to excellence, right? And so having the public understand that it's not about Carol.
Yeah.
It's about a community of people that have the same heart to serve, right? That's what it's about. And you all do the same thing here. It's not about Jake. It's not about...
General Dees?
Thank you. It's like, I'm going to give him the wrong title, and that's going to be terrible. I remember Bob Dees, but I was like, And knowing that those people are the 100,000-foot level,
right,
to have the vision to move forward, but yet you're teaching other people to look at that level too, right?
Yeah, what he was trying to say, you've done, because I got to meet some of your people too, is it's important, especially in something like a nonprofit where you're these type of deals where you're dealing with people with a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
And, if you can bring in staff that are going to be, pushing you along, like you're chasing someone, like, man, he's really killing it. It's not a specific job title. It's just a characteristic trait.
Right.
Like they're trying to achieve the next level of excellence, the next level of getting to that point. That's huge for us, because if you look around you, I've been in this case, if you look around you on let's call it the battlefield, and you're like, ooh, I feel like I'm running at 90 miles an hour, no one else is running with me, or no one else is firing shots, or no one else is picking up pieces.
Yeah.
That can be really crushing.
Yeah.
But if you look to your side and you're like, oh, he's right by my side, he's pushing as hard as I am, he's going to pick up what I drop, I'm going to pick up what he drops, that helps you provide this service, because these types of services can be exhausting and all consuming. And I've walked out of a class before, and you've probably walked out of session before, and you really didn't do a lot of work, but you are exhausted because your body just processed someone else's trauma. And I've spent my whole life in some form or fashion experiencing somebody else's trauma in my past careers. But the verbal back and forth is just as exhausting as the jumping off the fire truck or the ambulance or the emergency department or your kid experiencing trauma. So it pays dividends to have the right people in those places that are competent and doing their job correctly. That's organizationally important, but B, just have that characteristic to just step up, push harder, and be able to identify when they need help too, when they need to get out of the classroom and get on the horse and put the blindfold on or whatever it is, and say, you lead me around for a day or two and get me back on track.
Right.
So,
and that goes back to our conversation about the people in the muck and the mire of the divorce, right?
Yeah.
It's like, are you circling the people around you to be able to help carry you and hold your arms up when you need it? Right? Are you trusting those people enough to be there for you? And if you can build your organization with those same principles as we build our friendships and our families, people say to me, you've got the most amazing family culture. Well, that's because everybody's family. And if we can build our organization based on those principles, then you'll find those people and you'll be successful. And not that I haven't hired some crazy people, because I have.
Sure.
But I've also hired some really amazing people, and they're the ones that stick around.
I think that's a big part of, you mentioned the word legacy, and that's a big part of, I think, what you've built there. And it's about the way that you build legacy is by imparting your vision to other people. And those people that understand the vision, believe in it, and are dedicated to it are the people that are going to stay. And they're the people that are going to be running with you.
Yeah.
They're going to be right beside you the whole time because they get it.
Right.
They know what we're doing. They know the plan to get there, and they trust the leadership.
Yeah.
And they're willing to follow, and they are part of that succession plan of, okay, this is where we need to go, and should anything go wrong, this is how we pick up the pieces and move forward. And I think that's a big part of being a leader in an organization. General Dees will tell us a lot of times people will say, this is your vision, Bob. You had this vision to create this. And yes, he had a vision to create something, but he reminds us repeatedly now that this is, it's not just his vision, it's our vision.
Right.
It's the group.
Right.
He's brought people in that have good ideas that he wouldn't have. He's brought people in that are subject matter experts in
that's
things that
beautiful.
he's not there.
Yes.
So he's like, this isn't my vision anymore. This is our vision. This is us as a team.
Right.
Same way you brought Morgan in.
Yeah.
And same way you brought Ashley in. And I'm sure Betsy.
Right.
They all bring something to the table that you wouldn't maybe not have thought of yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's-
and one of the exercises I did, which is really simple with my team, because having people with the ability to accept and acknowledge that you have a different perspective than I do, and then be able to take that respect and say, okay, that actually may be better than what I thought. Right? That's hard for leaders.
Yeah.
If you've got any ego in your leadership, you can't do that. You get threatened by that. And so I have this Wells Fargo cup, which has the beautiful wagon that they have on it. And then in that, I have whatever happens to be on my desk. Pens, scissors, American flag. Somebody gave me a pen that has a horse head on it and a pen with a tulip or whatever. All these different things. So I put that in the middle of the table, and I gave everybody on my team a blank piece of paper. I said, draw what's in front of you. It's not an art contest. Just draw what do you see in front of you? And then I said, okay, exchange it with the person across the table from you. And where somebody might see the flag as the center, they didn't even see the horse head, right? Or somebody sitting over here saw both. And so it was like your perspective is different. And if you can respect that person's not wrong, you're just looking at it from a different perspective. It's like when we're working in our sessions. We tell people, change your perspective. Sometimes people squat down on the ground. Sometimes they go sit on the fence. Sometimes they just move it into a different place in the arena. But when we can change our perspective, now all of a sudden we can see things in a way that we go, I hadn't seen that before, right? And that's when growth starts happening. That's when learning starts happening. That's when all those beautiful moments start going, we made it. We did something different here. And that's success, right? When we can get those things.
I think that's as a leader, it's knowing where somebody else's perspective typically is. And being able to pull them in to utilize that perspective to advantage for the team.
Right. Absolutely. But if you don't start with respecting it, you're never going to be able to pull it in, right?
Yeah, if you're just trying to make, make little mini-me's, it doesn't work out. Yeah.
Right. No. Well, and you're not strong that way. No. You're stronger when you have all the different perspectives.
Well, that's not a succession plan either.
Right.
Because if they're always just looking to you for, if Ashley's always coming to you and asking, what do you want me to do here?
Right.
And she never says, yeah, I got this. And, maybe she kicks it back to you to check and you say, yep, that's right, go.
Yeah.
That's the succession plan, because you're, as a leader, if you're truly building a succession plan, you're trying to work yourself out of a job and make yourself somewhat obsolete.
Exactly.
Or make yourself, free yourself up where you don't have to be the boots on the ground.
I can be down here doing podcasts.
You can be down here doing a podcast, and you can be, operating at that 100,000 foot level.
Right.
And that's what you told me early on is, build your team so that you can rise to the next flight altitude.
Yeah, that's right.
And carry on. So where are we now with Healing Strides? Tell us about Healing Strides now. Tell us the services you provide.
Okay, so we are starting 2026 with a very positive outlook. 25 was very hard, and we are trying to serve more people, whatever that looks like, right? And so when sometimes people get jammed up and they go, you have a lot of programs. Well, no, we really don't. We have 2 programs.
Right.
We do therapeutic riding and horsemanship, mostly focused on horsemanship, because as we all know as horse people, you showing up to a barn and getting on your horse and riding is not horsemanship. No. You have to understand the body language. You have to understand the psychology. You have to understand the energy. You have to understand how do I groom and tack and all the things that go in. How do I go get my horse out of the field safely?
Right.
Right? Those are the horsemanship pieces that you want people to learn, not simply just show up and get on your horse, right? And so teaching all of those foundational principles, that's the therapeutic riding and horsemanship. Our mission is to serve people with personal challenges.
That's everybody.
That's everybody. Exactly. I have not met a human that does not have a personal challenge. Now, I will tell you, pre-COVID, that's not how we define personal challenges. We define personal challenge pre-COVID as people that had a diagnosed disability.
Okay.
And what we found through COVID was that we had women in particular showing up saying, I am depressed, I am angry, I have got to do something normal. I'm anxious, I'm fearful, all of those words. And we're like, oh my gosh, we can't not help these people. Remember that bleeding heart I have? So we started opening up, and then we went, whoa, our mission says personal challenges. These are very personal challenges. And
you don't always need a doctor to tell you you're depressed.
Right. And there's actually a new foundation that started by some neuropsychologists that said, we need to get ahead of people being diagnosed with depression and anxiety. We need to be serving them before they have to get a diagnosis. And I thought, oh, they're brilliant. So that is a real thing moving, like you said, in the world, right? People recognizing you don't need a diagnosis to know you're depressed.
Preemptive care. It's like taking mental vitamins.
Right, exactly. Don't wait till you're, really bad. And so, that's a piece of what we do. And so people come in and on what we call that side of the house, right? Then the other side of the house is the mental health education and coaching program.
Right.
And that is, you can do equine assisted psychotherapy. You can do, we are one of, we were the second licensed facility in the state, mental health facility for Get Horses, to do what's called brief strategic family therapy. It's an evidence-based model that I got a grant to get trained by the state. And then I called the lady before I accepted the grant, and I said, I think I can enhance your 30-year-old model. And her name's Olga. She's like, no, you can't. And I said, no, I really do. Hear me out. She's like, okay, I'll hear you out. And I said, we're going to add horses. And she says, well, tell me what that looks like. Now, the good Lord had put in her heart that she had watched a documentary on equine assisted services, maybe 3 weeks before I had called her.
Not an accident.
Well, thank you, Lord.
Not an accident.
So exactly. So she had it in her already thinking, and she's like, you know what? I think that'll work. And so they've allowed us. We're the only place in the world that does brief strategic family therapy with horses.
Cool.
And so, so that's really cool. And then we do, equine assisted psychotherapy, family therapy. We do a lot of coaching and educational pieces. So think coaching, like I have a master's in mental health coaching. It is about the difference in coaching and psychotherapy. People get very, very confused about. So if you take a line on a piece of paper and you go left or right, and then you take a line and you draw it down the middle, right? So you have a T on your paper. Psychotherapy is, if that line on the paper, wherever you just put it, is today, anything to the left of that line is your past.
Right.
That's psychotherapy.
Yep.
Anything to the right of that line is coaching. Right? So if I can, as a coach, work with you, and you're going to tell me about your past, because it's also who made you who you are today. It's like you said, who were you as a kid, right? What was your life? And so that's who makes us who we are.
Right.
And I can say to them, that must have been really difficult for you. What are we going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do today? I can't change any of that.
Yeah. Can't change it. Can't diagnose it. Can't tell you what it did to you. But you can talk about what we're going to do about it.
We can move forward.
Right.
So let's move forward, because that's really what people want. Some people need to go back and understand that stuff, and they need psychotherapy, and that's vitally important. But some people don't. They need to just move forward. And so, as a coach, you've got to be smart enough to say, that's not what I can do, and that's what you need.
Right.
And not to try to, do something that you're not qualified to do. That's going to mess people up worse, right? But but if you can go, oh, you know what? I think you do need to go work with the psychotherapist. Go work with that social worker. Go work with that professional counselor. Once you get where you feel solid and you're ready to set forward goals, and not that they don't do that, because they do also, but then come back. And we'll work again, right? So understanding your limitations and what you're allowed to do and what you should do and all those things. So the coaching piece is really powerful. Kids in particular, especially kids with trauma, they don't know basic rules of life, because parents are not teaching basic rules like choices and consequences. We've already talked about some of these things. Boundaries, respect, responsibility, empathy, right?
Yeah.
Trust. I had a group of girls from the county, and they had been sexually assaulted in some form or another, whether it was their dad, an uncle, whatever it was. They had had some issues, and they were failing in school. They were the girls that walked in. They had, in the middle of the summer, the hoodie over their face. You couldn't see who they were. Their hair is all in their face, and they don't want to be seen. Right?
Hiding in plain sight.
Yes. And so, we have this lovely little donkey out there named Don Quixote, and Frosty were in there, and I think JoJo was in there. And as we're going on, I don't always tell the story of the horse or the donkey or whatever, but in this particular case, we were working on trust. And this little donkey had been abused, and so he wouldn't allow people to touch his head. Well, after about 4 or 5 weeks in, he's allowing them to pet his ears and his head, and I just was like, totally off script, but I was like, guys, do you see what's happening here? And they're like, what? And I said, he's letting you touch his head. Has he ever done that before? No. Right. I said, you're building trust with him. This is amazing. And I was like just doing horse stuff. This is great. You guys are helping me build trust with this donkey. And the one girl says, he didn't trust us? I'm like, no, he didn't trust you. He didn't trust anybody. We built trust with him. And I said, yeah, you're helping him heal. He was hurt. And she takes her hood off and she throws her hoodie back. And she said, you mean I could build trust again? And I'm like, yeah, you can. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh God, thank you for this, this donkey. And of course he's used donkeys before.
Yeah, he's kind of fond of donkeys, actually.
Exactly. But it helped them understand through this donkey that they had that same opportunity. Well, those girls started coming back, hair in a ponytail. One became a cheerleader. One joined the volleyball team. They were very successful by the time they graduated high school.
Wow.
And it's like all because of Little Donkey. And so we have to have the insight to be able to see the parallel to help the human.
Yep.
And that to me is what the coaching part is all about. And so, the educational piece is, okay, you need to learn how to read. Well, let's read to the horse. Let's do math with the horse.
Right.
And maybe you get a horse that cooperates and stomps his foot for you, whatever. But it's really about helping them reach their personal goals with the horse being the motivator. Right? So if the horse is our motivator, because these kids don't want to do math, they don't want to read, but they want to be with the horse.
Right.
Veterans, they don't want to do the work, but they love the horse.
Yep.
And so if the horse becomes the motivator for them, we can do all kinds of things. And then you've got to be savvy enough in your horse knowledge and your human knowledge to parallel the two. So we do some great leadership stuff with paralleling leadership with horses and leadership with people, because what we know is that if a horse doesn't trust you, they're not doing anything.
Right.
If you're not a good leader, that horse is doing nothing because they're like, what?
Right.
So those are our programs. And of course, then we do community events to build awareness. Like we talked earlier about the Apple Festival. The Boone's Mill Apple Festival is the second weekend in September. And that is an amazing day that is just about building awareness and serving the community back. So that's who we are in a nutshell.
So early on, when you first started, you were at 15, then you went to 55. How many people are you serving right now per week?
So we serve, but in both sides of the house, so to speak, we serve about 200 a week.
Yeah. Wow. So that's 6 days a week?
5 days a week.
5 days a week.
Yeah.
40 people a day. That's impressive.
Well, they don't all come 40 at a time. They're sporadic.
Yeah, I got you.
Like Tuesdays, Thursdays tend to be the heavier days, but yeah.
That's cool.
And I will say that varies. Like right now, we're at about 150 a week.
Sure.
Because it's winter.
Yeah, summer,
right?
busy season.
Well, spring and fall are the two busiest seasons.
Right.
Fall is the most busy.
Yeah,
July's
hot.
Yeah.
It's hot in July. So I will say, if you haven't been to Healing Strides, go out there, go volunteer.
Come to a tour.
Yeah, come to a tour. It's right there outside of Boone's Mill, just south of Roanoke, right off 220.
Naff
Easy
Road.
to get to. Naff Road, Maggoty Creek. Yeah. And it's a beautiful, beautiful property. I will say every time that I step onto that property, there's an enormous sense of peace. It's just a good place to spend time regardless of where you are.
I call it holy ground.
It is. It's exactly what we call this place, and I think that both are 100% correct.
Yeah.
Carol, thank you.
Oh, thank you all. This is fun.
Yeah, this was great. We may
I did not know where this conversation was going to go, but it's been great.
We never do.
Yeah, we don't.
We never
often
do.
have an
And
agenda.
God always takes it where it needs to
That's
go,
right.
and I hope there will be a part 2 of this sometime in the future, and we'll see
Yeah.
where we go from there. But we usually close this out with prayer. Would you
I would
care
love
to
to.
lead us?
Yeah, I'd love to. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, wow. Thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you are doing. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you're going to do that we are not even aware of. Thank you for these two men that sit here that glorify your name and want nothing more than to help others see who you are and to see that you can have such an influence on their lives and the lives of those that they touch. I ask that you put a hedge of protection around Valor Farm, that you put a hedge of protection around Healing Strides, that you hide these two holy ground places from the enemy, that when people come onto this ground, that they do feel peace and that they feel protected from the enemy, that they find a way to find you, whether it's through us and the words that we might say or the smile that we might give, or through your mighty horses, Father. We didn't talk a lot about the beauty. You have chosen to have your son come back on a horse, so we know there's a special relationship there. And Father, we know that that horse is a spiritual animal that will carry us emotionally and physically, Father. So we ask that you put a hedge of protection around our herds. I ask that every listener, that you are preparing their hearts to hear the peace that they need to hear. The words that are spoken in this podcast today, Father, I ask that you let them touch the people that you need them to touch, that something that we said strikes a chord in their heart, that they will be the person you designed them and created them to be. For Father, sometimes we miss that purpose. And I ask that you show them very distinctly that purpose, and that you allow us to find those quiet moments, whether it's driving back and forth to work with no radio, no phone, and just worshiping you, Father, or whether it's out sitting on a hay bale or sitting on the back of a horse, Father, that we just want to be close to you, and we want to hear your voice, and we want to go in the direction that you would have us go. Father, we thank you for, again, everything that you have done for us. In your Son, Jesus' name, and in his blood we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
That's a wrap.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Yeah.